Hei, tervetuloa. Welcome to Fraktio's Perjantai Pressis, Friday presentations as we call it. My name is Satu Heikinheimo. I'm a service designer, amongst many other things, here at Fraktio. And today we have a very, very delicious topic for, I would say, if you're interested in sustainability, if you're interested in designing with a slightly different perspective, I think this event will be very delicious for you. So just as a little introduction to why are we having this kind of panel discussion today is that I was studying in Gothenburg University like a year ago, a course in design and the post-humanist perspective. And since then, I must say that as a designer, my mind was like how come I hadn't heard about these things before? So because of this, we have amazing group of people joining the panel today from Sweden, from Helsinki, Stockholm, Gothenburg. So let me introduce you to our guests. Let's start with Oskar Mörke. Welcome, Oskar.
Hi, thank you very much.
So good to have you join us in this panel discussion. So could you share a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, so my name is Oskar, and as you mentioned, Satu, we met in this course together that was hosted by Thomas. But yeah, I think I describe myself as running a digital agency, kind of mix between like technology and creativity and design. So yeah, it was truly an eye-opener to get like a different perspective of design and to kind of use this as, a new lens. So I'm excited to listen to the others and have a fruitful discussion.
Fantastic. So good to have you join us. And then we have Thomas, the person who actually has put us all together. So welcome, Thomas.
Thank you, Satu. It's really nice to be your guest today. So as you mentioned, I'm a designer, researcher, and educator at HTK Valand, the Academy of Art and Design at the Gothenburg University. And some years ago, I initiated and started this freestanding course that has the same name as today's talk, Design and the Posthumanist Perspective. And I have also co-initiated a network, Design and Posthumanism Network. And actually, we are all, the four of us today, we are all members of this network. It happened to be like that. And then apart from teaching, I'm very engaged at the moment in a project called Shimmer and Entanglements in the river basin of Viskan. Maybe I will come back to that a bit later.
That's great. Thank you so much. And it's so good to have you with us here today, Thomas. And let's take our next guest, Jana Pejoska. Welcome, Jana. You're on mute. Jana, you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself? This is so...
Okay, well, hello again, and thanks for inviting me. I am a design researcher working at the Faculty of Education at Helsinki University, where I work mostly with issues around data, ethics, and design. I'm also at the same time lecturing at Aalto University in exactly this topic about design for the post-humanist era. What else should I say? How I started to think about this topic maybe is that, well, thinking about design and the present and the future, there is often this kind of tension that we don't have the right tools or the right methods to approach these changes that we are facing. climate change or overpopulation, changes in technology like AI technology or biotechnologies, I started to feel that there must be something bigger than what we have used so far. It cannot be that we relate to the world in the same way like we have done so far, where the human is in the center and all the world around us is just here to be our resource. So this is maybe how I started to think about these topics.
Very nice to have you here, Jana. And I must say that I've met Jana. We met, was it like, I don't know, 5 years ago or even more, in a coding course, Ruby on Rails.
Yes.
Yes, in Aalto. It was in the startup sauna. We were supposed to have one more guest, Agnes Bakkegård, who is a sustainability entrepreneur at Where Is My Pony, but unfortunately she wasn't able to join us due to personal things. So, but I'm sure we will be fine. Of course, we will miss her, but we will be fine. So, in the invitation and on the website, there was a sentence. We are gradually becoming aware that man is not the center of the universe and that we need to expand our understanding of what it means to be human today. What does this mean? Who wants to start? You can keep your microphones open, I mean.
Well, it's amazing that I am here with two people that lecture on this. So, I mean, fill in if you need. But I was thinking, I mean, when I first approached this, it was like this post-human word. I mean, I think the first thing that I noticed was the kind of the definition of man and humanity in itself, as also like some sort of heteronormative white male. So I think I took a stand both in sustainability, but also in feminism, of understanding like, okay, what has been our center of attention and where should we be heading? Some of my first initial ideas when I first met you, Thomas.
And Thomas, what do you think? Like, what does this have to do with anything?
Well, it makes. I will like continue with what Oscar started saying a little bit, because when I like got more knowledgeable about this and started the things I started, it was natural to use the word posthumanism and posthumanist, etc. But maybe I could have also chosen to use the word post-anthropocentric or post-anthropocentrism, or maybe non-dualism, post-dualism, concepts like that. So it's very much about both challenging the idea about the universal man, which is often then a white European man that has become like the model for a lot of things, and with terrible consequences. And then it's also about challenging the idea that the human being is like something extra on top of everything, outside somehow. And that maybe is more about post-anthropocentrism. But of course, in a discussion like this, we may maybe be a bit sloppy and use these concepts like intertwined, and that's okay maybe. But there is a difference, which is both about challenging man, but also the human being.
Can I add something to this? I think that it's very interesting to open up our ideas about how we understand posthumanism and how would we also like to create what posthuman would mean for this world. And one of the things that came to my mind when thinking about the posthuman is that posthuman literally means something beyond human. So I start always to think about some kind of advances. What will be the tomorrow? What will be the future of the human tomorrow? And I can already imagine, I'm sure as many here like you, many scenarios where there are technological advancements to humans that changes biologically, physically, change how we are. That would also have a lot of implications how we should look at designing for these humans. And also, I think that it's also interesting to think that there will be representatives of human who have power to act as humans in design when we're thinking about who are the future users, when we're considering for who we are creating. Like, for example, there could be, or there is already algorithms that have power of decision, just like a human. So in design processes, these needs to be as well considered as human, not only the different kind of varieties of human that already exist.
That's a very good point. And I must say, personally, to me, after this course, I totally, because the reason why I attended the course was that I wanted to learn more about sustainability and like, how is it related to sustainability? How can we design more sustainably? What can I do as a designer to create a more sustainable world? Is it possible? And if we, like, one of the biggest epiphanies was that we cannot design a sustainable tomorrow if we only consider humans. And I think this is the core of, at least in my understanding, the core of the posthumanism, that it's beyond, like, we have some examples along the way that we can then discuss, but how can we create a better environment if we don't, for example, consider the forests or the lakes or the animals or whatever there is?
I think that's a very good point that you bring in, Satu, to the conversation, and I think about it like that the conventional sustainability discourse is very much within the system, but actually posthumanism is really criticizing and challenging the system. So sustainability discourse and posthumanism is really, the way I see it, different things.
Yeah, could you share a little bit, like, how do you see sustainability, Thomas? Like, what is the conflict there?
I mean, often we are supposed to talk about ecological, social, and I guess
Economical.
Yeah. Sustainability. We are supposed to think about those together, right? That's very difficult because often it ends up with it's really difficult to achieve things if we need to take everything in consideration. Sustainability, often it can also be about greenwashing, or it can be business as usual, but a little bit better. And maybe we don't have time for that now. We are living in urgent times. If we believe in science, I sound like Greta now, but that's really okay.
Exactly.
What do you think, Satu?
Well, I think sustainability is kind of scratching the surface, but I think like where the change actually happens is when we kind of become aware of the systems, that we are all linked, and how people's well-being is actually linked with the well-being of the forests, for example. So there is this huge ecosystem, and we don't quite understand it as thoroughly as we should. But I still believe that every action also matters. Like, even like, if it's kind of almost a luxury to be able to even try to change the system, but if we kind of raise awareness, like with this this panel discussion, raising awareness that things can also be thought from this perspective, then I think we can, bit by bit, start changing how people think? What do you think, Jana? You're also teaching. What kind of criticism have you faced? Some criticism, or what kind of comments would you have about this?
I think that sustainability and posthumanism have many overlapping areas, and I wouldn't start by criticizing sustainability. Rather, I would like to point out maybe the the areas that are here common, which is highlighting some of the values that we have been suppressing, let's say, when designing or when supporting the growth of the civilization in the way that we have. And essentially, I think it's really important to think about the shift in these values that that we have when creating things, and this is to start considering all the actors involved, like we have been all saying. I think we are in agreement here. All the non-human actors, the living beings, but also entities and systems of the biosphere that we don't really we have neglected. Even though knowing that we are dependent right on them, maybe some kind of shortcuts have been mistaken for simplicity in design. I think this is something that needs to be considered, and maybe like in addition to these, just the first stage is always raising awareness that we have to shift away the perspective from ourselves and look at the bigger picture. Once we recognize which are all the stakeholders, we can start looking at in which ways we can have progress and development that is beneficial for all, or as much as possible, at least. I don't know if there is such a magic recipe that we can create for humans or for our world while supporting the growth of the rest of the world, but I think that we must try.
Yeah.
Maybe if I can say something that will bridge over to Oscar, and something that you said, Jana, you talked about dependency, and a person that I found a couple of years ago and that I really think is interesting and important is the ecofeminist and philosopher Val Plumwood, and she is thinking, or was thinking, about denial of dependency. So that's really the problem, that we are we are denying that we are dependent, and then we need to think about relations, right? And that is what Oscar did in the course, and we have, or Oscar has prepared a film, or I mean, you made a film, and the intention was to show it here today. And it's about relations.
Well,
yeah.
do you want to say something before we see the film, or should we just go for it?
No, just go for it, and I can talk about it afterwards. Probably, I mean, it's gonna make sense. I don't know.
Okay, let's play.
I remember getting that strange mail. Such a weird thing you can order online. And there it was, just like I've seen them. Strong yellow, kind of spiderweb shape. It was just 2 weeks earlier my first encounter with the slime mold happened. The world's smartest slime. One of those things when you see it, you're torn between laughter, disgust, and excitement. And something cool that researchers, engineers have tried to understand and used for all kinds of fun and weird projects. And they ended with this note that you can actually grow it yourself. And they also added, be careful, because they can easily escape. Said and done, once the slime mold was in my hands, I went house shopping, somewhere to keep him. glass jar, paper box, and that weird metal and glass fireplace. Through different guides, online forums, and actually one of the researchers from the documentary had kind of a handbook of what they eat, what they drink, and how they prefer. They eat oats, they need water, and they can eat a lot. And they also prefer to be in the dark. So every morning, after waking up, every night, before going to bed, more oats, more water. And once their first home was established, it got a name. It went from a slime mold to Fred/George. Based on the uncertainty of what actually the life of the slime mold was. It just didn't feel like one single entity. And with a total of 4 different houses, Fred/George multiplied to Mike, Bob, and Harvey. And it turned to a co-creation, a co-living weird type of friendship, with nature being present right in the living room, and the contrast of a plastic bag to symbolize the synthetic and almost unnatural. But as time passed, some interest was lost. Mold started to grow, and Fred/George kind of decayed. They didn't survive without me. I needed to be there night and day. Otherwise, they froze. I will always remember our time, and Fred and George might get a new home. But it seems like we humans, we have the capability to form these kind of relations, and hopefully it can bring us closer to nature. So, through this explorative study of non-traditional relations, I must say, I still call them my friends.
So, yeah, perhaps you're also filled with some kind of uncertainty if it's this yellow thing is beautiful, funny, or scary. But yeah, this was kind of like an exploration into non-human relationship. Because when I first noticed like the documentary, the professor who grew it, she had like a relationship, like it's kind of a pet or a friend or something. So that was kind of the starting point of trying to understand. That it just popped out of nowhere. There's like, oh, I gotta take care of my slime mold that I called Fred/George. So yeah.
And they are still, they still exist, right?
They still exist. So they went into hibernation when the course finished, but I've actually given them a new house, given them new water. So now they're growing, becoming bigger. They eat a lot of oats, and I have to keep an eye on them because they can actually like crawl around and create a little bit of a mess. But I mean, I'm trying to use them also to. A big thing about this was that the slime mold was used also in an experiment to try to replicate the most efficient subway line in the world, Tokyo. So they placed a map with all the subway stations of Tokyo. They placed oat flakes at all the major stations, and then they put a slime mold, and the slime mold formed kind of, I don't know what to say, but they grew exactly the way the Tokyo subway line is shaped. So the shortest and most efficient distance. And, it creates these different patterns, and it's, for me, it's a very aesthetically pleasurable things you can create, or they can create. But also like I also in the end of the movie I show some clips of Sourdough of the movie Her, when he falls in love in his operative system, and this kind of the Japanese trend of getting virtual girlfriends or virtual partners, to kind of also dig a little deeper into those kind of other non-human relationships.
What did you learn about doing this kind of experiment? What did you kind of experience in your own view of seeing something else than a human, kind of having the right to exist, and kind of planning your day, kind of having this thing as part of your daily routines?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, speaking about Thomas' talk on dependencies, I noticed very quickly that we were. I mean, the slime mold was dependent on me giving it food, and I wanted to give an experiment where I didn't, try to get myself involved, but the slime mold. I think I wrote a kind of an essay about it as well. The slime mold didn't really care about me. So it just existed. And if I didn't give it food, it just went into hibernation. So it was this nice give and take kind of thing. But I know we discussed this 2 weeks ago about like what do we learn if I'm still using this post-humanistic lens in work when I like consult and make products. And I dug a little deeper because 2 weeks ago I said no, not really. But using this kind of wider lens, digging deeper into non-human relationships, I think I formed more of a nuanced thinking of that I still use it, because we want to create this like relations and dependencies to products, to services that we design, and also when we talk about things like sustainability.
Maybe I can connect to that. Actually, it's interesting when you were describing your day and how you relate to the slime mold, because in the course that we were teaching with my colleague about posthumanism in design, we were thinking what would be the best way to make apparent our relations that we have in our daily lives with any kind of technological objects or living beings or all of the entities. How can we start even to recognize what are all the actors in our world when we are so used, almost programmed to recognize things as they come? So one of the exercises that we did, and I thought was really interesting, is that all of our students had to keep a diary about everything they interact with, how they perceive these objects or living beings, or maybe it's air or water, and I think that is something that needs to be trained, how we can recognize our relations with the other actors around us before we can start kind of planning the system of who is everything, what is everything involved. Let's say when designing an apartment house or a school or a network system for traveling, like you said, the metro stations or anything. How can we shift this perspective? It will require training.
I think that's very well said, that it's kind of learning to see and learning to kind of become aware that what are these different actors, because we can't always see, we don't see AI, we don't see some small particles. And I think it's interesting that you shared this, Jana. Maybe Thomas, you could share like what we did on the course, like how did we start our projects, like with the entanglements?
Yeah, and this is from, I think it's we can say that it's like a feminist approach to always try to be really situated. So, and thinking about, bodily experiences and try to be specific, detailed, things like that. So what we did in the course was to start with a site. You started with a site, And the next step then is, of course, to understand who is here. And of course, this is what we do as designers. Often, we have a context, a site maybe, and then we need to understand the stakeholders. But often they are human stakeholders. Mm-hmm. So you were then encouraged to identify also not instead, but also to identify other than human stakeholders. So that was like the site and the stakeholders, and then what's happening here? What's taking place? What's at stake? Yeah, that's the start of it.
Yeah, and like in the beginning, it's like, okay, it's this and this, and then when you kind of start to apply this mindset of kind of seeing, kind of being very sensitive to seeing, then you start seeing more, and then you start digging deeper into stories and why is this like this? What happened before? Who was here before? And things like that.
Yeah, I would also like to point out that human-centric design has done a lot for different kind of products, and it has been quite useful to us humans, but also it has reduced somehow the user to one type of user, like we were just explaining, like how we have become like humans, how we have trained to be even by those systems. And I think it's also one other interesting thing to consider, the invisible actors now. Let's say we can observe technological objects, we can observe living beings, but what are those invisible actors that shape our lives nowadays? And one thing that comes to my mind now, I would in another situation maybe give a different example, but as I'm now studying a lot and working with data, I like to bring out these examples. How much our own data that we live in different technological systems changes the way the systems work to us, how much they represent us. Maybe different kind of readings of our presence that change with different technologies and with sensors, change the way we perceive the human, or what the human is about.
I love that. I was actually just talking about that yesterday on my service design training, that how the data, when we're talking, this kind of is linked to biased data as well. Like what data is available now is not necessarily the data we should use to create something new. So and sometimes we use the data so that it's on our, how do you say it? So that it's preferable to us. So I love that you work with data. Do you have some more examples of about the data perspective?
It's a huge topic. I have so much to talk about, but one thing that is really dear to my heart is data transparency, or designing for data transparency, because there is so much information that can be turned into knowledge if we just want to do that. There is so much we can learn about ourselves, how we are, or how we can be better, or where we fail. Things that are not apparent to us are just within our reach if we just design systems that are fair to the users and open up all these information, make it accessible. And these are also direct systems that we use, but also indirect systems. As we know, the Internet of Things way of building environments is very complex, and it interchanges so much data that I think that if we want to be better, we can be so much better.
But there's also an interesting perspective of the IoT, that the humans are no longer going to be the majority of data creators. It's basically machine-to-machine data that's going to be the take over everything.
How do you mean that it will take over?
Well, so the machines generating data. So, for example, if something is connected to a Wi-Fi sensor, a security camera, or a thermometer, or stuff like that. So the human data is I mean, I just thought of it right now, is probably going to be a little bit more obsolete in the future. Perhaps we know everything about humans. So.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring this up. Thank you. I didn't consider it. That then we should then think who produces, who is the author of this data, and then will these be the libraries of the future? Will these be kind of like the books that we could interpret or study so we can understand some relations or actions or properties better rather than reading interpreted data? Maybe we will have systems that could use the multiverse of this data in a way that can be even one of the designers or the co-designer.
Regardless if humans create data or if data creates data, how do you react upon this concept that I would say now? And I don't remember who coined it, but I read it in the wonderful book Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And she talks about intraspecies incest. So we are, human beings are like moving towards a future, a scenario where we only deal with things that we have or systems that we have created ourselves. So it becomes like an intraspecies incestuous system somehow, or situation. What do you think about that in relation to what you just said?
I think the word incest here I have a problem with. I'm not sure how to relate to that because I somehow feel that we are the parents of these systems, that we have created them. So somehow like it's a natural step in evolution, it seems to me. I do think that we will continue to have relationships with I don't know if I should call them artificial intelligence, because maybe we will be one with them. I don't know. Maybe this is our future. Maybe we will just evolve to enhance ourselves so much that maybe we will fuse. This is something so far out that I cannot imagine. But I think it's interesting to think about. And start differentiating species within non-human actors, non-human technological actors, because it is about abilities, it is about skills and how their role, etc. Like everything we also assign, not everything, but many things that we also assign when we to different species when we are describing.
Go ahead, Oscar.
With that, Thomas, would that be as opposed to interacting with, for example, nature, or?
Yeah, the natural world, and that the natural world that is somehow decreasing more and more.
I was just thinking, like, what is the opposite of interspecies incest? Like, what would it be? Like, what would be the?
So that's interspecies relations, let's say, as opposed to intraspecies mirroring or incest. Yeah, I agree that the word incest is very strong here, but so let's say intraspecies mirrors or something like that could be better, maybe.
I wanted to raise the term nature human. So this is probably one good entry point when talking about this topic, post-humanist design perspective. So what is nature human? What does it mean?
What do you mean, nature human?
Nature human, like when talking about non-anthropocentric view, and like nowadays we see us as humans, and then there is nature somewhere, but we are not like, we don't consider that we are the nature. So I think I just wanted to point out that I think during when kind of digging deeper into this post-humanist view, I realized that I had also thought that I am like something else. Like I'm not part of the nature. I'm just a human that goes to nature, and then there is the nature, and it's living its own life, and it's lovely to go and visit, especially during the pandemics. It's like, yes, I'm in nature. I'm at peace.
We're there.
Yeah, somewhere there.
You were talking about nature culture.
Yes. Yeah.
Then I think it's really good to remind ourselves about the fact that when we are then using the word we, it's actually not, I mean, who is this we? Because a lot of human beings don't understand the world in that way. If we would, I mean, it's just unimaginable to think that you are not part of the natural world. But then, of course, there are some of us, maybe the four of us here, let's say, for us, it's challenging to think that we are actually not outside, but part of the natural world, because we are products of the Western system, right?
I think that's very well said. And I would also like to raise another aspect here, which is, what is natural? Is organic only natural? Or is everything that is here natural? Maybe I sound like a very big technophile, but maybe it's because I'm studying, I'm working with media technology. For me, this is a natural environment where when I am in, even when I'm in a VR experience, I feel that it is a natural experience for me in some ways, because it is an experience, no? And it doesn't have to be organic always. There is a conflict, of course, when we should think in a bit techno-reductionist way, so to protect the other species and to be fair. Of course we should, but it doesn't mean that our experience of our creations is that it's not natural. I mean, look how much time we spent connected to these online worlds. This is our natural today.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. We had a question from the audience asking that, what are your thoughts about cradle-to-cradle design in the context of post-humanism? It's a very interesting question. What do you guys think?
I'm not sure what cradle-to-cradle design means.
Yeah, well, cradle to cradle is like from kind of that you use the materials and it has a lot to do with circular economy. I think this would be the term nowadays. There is this book about, I think it's called Cradle to Cradle, and it's actually made of plastic, and you can even take a shower reading the book, and then you can ditch it in the plastic recycling bin, and then it will be made a new book or something else.
I'm not an expert in cradle to cradle at all, but we have been talking about it at HDK when planning courses and so on, and there we felt that it doesn't really take the deep time into consideration. And it also doesn't really take non-human stakeholders into consideration. It doesn't take shadow places into consideration, like the places that we that we like are linked to, but that we don't really see. Yeah. So I think, and maybe there have been additions to the original concept of cradle to cradle, but it really, some thinking or concepts from posthumanism could really, I think, add good things to the theory of cradle to cradle.
Yeah, and I think cradle to cradle was something when talking about sustainability, as we kind of, most of the people know it, I think cradle to cradle is in the same scratch off surface. You use the materials that you've already kind of sourced from somewhere, and then you're reusing them and you keep them in the loop, but it doesn't really change much. Maybe something, but maybe we're not the right people to answer this question. I wanted to hear about your project, Thomas. Could you share? I think that would be very interesting to hear about the project, the Skimmer och Harvor. Oh, sorry, my Swedish, and Skimmer och Harvor, or however.
How would you translate the shimmer into Finnish?
I don't know.
No. But okay, so maybe I will not, just some minutes, but maybe also cradle to cradle is that you don't really criticize the idea that let's say that plants and animals are objects. Maybe, I mean, they are resources in this concept, objects. But to return then to non-dualism and posthumanism, is the idea is then to challenge or to kind of try to see things as subjects instead of objects. And there is this very well-spread quote by Ursula Le Guin, the science fiction author: "Subjectify the world, because look where objectifying it has gotten us." So in this project, Shimmer and Entanglements in the river basin of Viskan, I, together with my colleague Theo Ågren, and also a bunch of other people from different disciplines, we set out to treat a whole river basin as a subject. So that was like the foundation. Because what happens when you try to understand or try to approach something as a subject is that it demands then, or you can engage with it. You should engage with it in other ways. You need to start to try to communicate somehow. Ask questions, listen. Very difficult, of course, but we should try at least. And then, of course, artistic tools, designerly tools can complement the existing ways of doing it, that science already tried to have a communication. With a river, for instance, how do you feel? What's your health situation at the moment, and so on. And so this Shimmer and Entanglements, it's like an umbrella, it's a platform, and within it there are a lot of sub-projects that are being developed right now. And we have a webpage in Swedish, but feel free to visit it and learn more.
Maybe actually, I don't know if our streaming master could maybe point that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds interesting. Yeah.
So this object-subject, that's very crucial. And maybe one of you could continue on that, or something else.
I mean, I have a thing that I've been thinking about ever since I started this post-human journey, and it was the concept of it's called anthropomorphism. I can't even explain it. But when you use like the human attributes to, for example, for an animal, and if you see a dog smile, then you assume that it's happy. If this is, I mean, wouldn't this be even harder? I mean, how can we even start to understand what kind of attributes an ocean or a sea has?
There was actually this great example about a river in New Zealand that has legal rights. And I think this is a very interesting and like exciting example of what our future could look like. So what if in our society and in the human-centered world, we would give other actors and non-human entities like AI, maybe there's a certain AI that we want to give rights so they can exist. So do you have to have legal rights to be able to exist? What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's a very healthy topic, a healthy thought to think that entities like rivers and animals and artificial intelligence should have rights. Probably they will not be exactly the same like human rights, but there are animal rights. Everyone has heard of animal rights, and they do protect animals from certain crimes. And I think that it will be very interesting to think what would be a balance to create that system, that legal system, where the rights of different species are protected. And how will we give up this power of being the most powerful and having the rights over everything? I mean, if viruses are rare and we want to preserve them for some reason and they spread and they take over and become a pandemic, will they have the rights to do that? That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, so many thoughts, but I was thinking about the animal rights and from whose perspectives are we giving these rights? So we make animal rights so that we can still eat them and kind of destroy species. So they have rights that suit humans. But what if yeah, go ahead.
I don't think it's a conflict to think that everything could have rights. I mean, according to this concept of rights of nature, because it's the right to exist, the right to thrive, and the right to develop. But then it needs to be taken into what Donna Haraway talks about, living and dying well together. So of course we all have the right also to defend ourselves, and we have the right to exist. And then there will be dying, but this dying needs to be done in a respectful way, or a good way, or something.
Yeah. It's interesting that you pointed out the pandemic and what is the right for a virus that is very much non-human, but it's entering our system. So from post-humanist perspective, does this virus have a right to exist? Yeah, go ahead.
I think that it's something like 300,000 types of external living creatures live in our bodies. This is like 300,000 types. So I don't know who gets to decide about the right to live, but at the moment, we are fighting for human lives. We don't give recognition to the virus or to any other unless they support our living. But I think that I'm not an expert on this, but I think that there is a balance also within our bodies and within nature. The species co-live together. this is not a strange concept. We do co-live together, and there are cycles, food chains and cycles that coexist.
And a good reminder: the virus it wasn't the virus's intention to enter into our system. We forced it somehow because of anthropogenic reasons, because of the Anthropocene situation. That wasn't the intention of the virus. It happened.
Yeah, I also find myself often thinking that what kind of responsibilities do we have over non-conscious beings in this kind of situations? If there is, let's say, the virus has no consciousness to know where it's going. It's going where they find resources, or I don't know. The mosquito goes to find food. They don't know better. What is our responsibility? I think this is something interesting. Do we have to take care of the weaker, or do we have to fight for our survival and kind of destroy something that is in our way? It's a tough call, I think.
Very much. Should we do a little final round before we have like 4 minutes left? What if we do a final round, and if you guys could share what would be your tip if someone wants to know more about this topic, or if someone wants to kind of like, what can I do? Like, what can I do next to become more aware or to understand what is this thing all about? How can I start to consider others other than human beings?
Just be curious, read more, explore. Keywords work like magic. For the designer listeners, I can recommend one paper which is called More Than Human-Centric Design. I forget the authors, but I think it's a very good article that also includes practical advices for how to work with something that is more than human-centered, which carries posthumanist values. What would others say?
Well, I think I've had the most success into introducing people to the posthuman concept of a Danish artist duo, Studio Thinking Hand, which gives they work with bio art, they work with robotics, and they give this like little thought experiments when nature creates arts, when technology creates art. And I think it's also perhaps a little it works great in pubs. When they open up, you can just show them your phone on Instagram, where you can go scroll a little bit to get a bit of understanding about the aesthetic and the thinking.
Great.
Yeah, and I can add that using one of the words here in the title, perspective, there has to be a change. Whenever you take a different perspective, there has to be a change. Otherwise, there's no point taking a different perspective. So don't just bling your proposals or texts with posthumanism unless you are prepared to really do this shift. And then when you take a different perspective, you're supposed to see something that you didn't see before. And if you don't see anything else than what you normally see, then maybe you haven't really, you are not using the perspective in the right way, maybe.
Thank you. And here was the link to Thomas's project, Skimmer och Harbor. Yep. And then there is this other link about the Design and Posthumanism Network, which you all should go and check out. Like, who's there? You will find interesting people and interesting projects when you go and check out behind that link. And personally, like what my tip would be is to kind of keep your eyes open, and also what Jana said, Google. And it's about perspective, and sometimes, like, even if we know things, we need experiences. And I think like going on Thomas's or Jana's course could be one thing. And like when we start to see and we start to explore, perspective is not really something you can just take like that. It requires some reading, studying, and experiencing. So I think that would be a good go ahead and call to action for anyone who's interested in the topic. But thank you, everyone. It was a very big, huge topic, and I know that we could be talking about this for hours and hours, but considering we only had 1 hour, I think I hope the audience got some insight on what is this all about, and what is it really. So you have linked to everybody's website on the Fractio website on the event page if you want to go and check out our panelists' work and who these people are. But other than that, thank you so much, Oscar, Thomas, and Jana, and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Michael. And hope to see you soon. And everyone who attended this presentation, have a wonderful evening and see you soon. Bye-bye.